everybody, my name is Victoria and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing the mid-year book freakout tag. I never know if I say those words in the correct order. I've actually done this book tag I think every year since I've started my channel, and so I just think it's a fun way to check in and kind of do a little overview of how my reading year is going. According to the all-knowing and all-powerful Goodreads website, I have read 29 out of 60 books. I set 60 books as my goal for this year, and I'm just about halfway there. So let's go ahead and dive into the questions for the tag. Question number 1 is, what is the best book that you've read in 2020? It's always so hard to pick just one book, but the same book kept standing out in my mind when I reflected on the year, and that book is going to be the first book in the Mistborn trilogy, The Final Empire. And I have been just really enjoying Brandon Sanderson books this year, and I'm also one of the hosts for a Stormlight Archives read-along that I will link the info down below for if you haven't heard me talk about that already. But so far this year, this book was such a fun ride. The world is so unique and interesting. It's very easy to read. It's very fast-paced. It's very reader-friendly, I feel. It reads kind of like a thriller adventure book, but it's also a really detailed and huge fantasy world. It has really lovable and wonderful characters that we follow. It is just such a good time, and I'm really glad that I finally picked up Mistborn, and I'm anxiously waiting to see how this trilogy wraps up, and I probably won't get to the third book until July. I really liked the second book in the trilogy as well, but I think this first book stands out as having really just grabbed me and pulled me into the world. The ending of this book has so many twists and turns that you don't expect, and I think this first book just is really well crafted and well written. Not that the second book isn't, the second book is as well, but I think this first book so far is my favorite in the series, and I'm really excited to get to the third book, hopefully in the month of July. Question number 2 is, what is the best sequel that you have read so far in 2020? Now, I promise this tag won't be only Brandon Sanderson, but this is probably the best sequel that I read. And I read this right at the beginning of the year. This was the first book that I finished in January. This is Starsight by Brandon Sanderson. It is the second book in a new young adult series that Brandon Sanderson is in the process of writing, and I believe there are 4 books projected in the series. I really enjoyed Skyward, but I loved Starsight because of the way that we built upon the world and we expanded the universe, and we got to go to different planets. We get to meet a lot of different races of aliens in this book. It reminded me a little bit of Guardians of the Galaxy meets Top Gun. This book also ends on quite the cliffhanger, and so I am anxiously awaiting for the rest of the series to continue. I think we have to wait a little bit longer, at least a year or 2, before Brandon Sanderson is going to be able to release the third book, but I am just having so much fun with these. I will probably reread these books before the third book comes out, just because they're that much fun, and I want to make sure that I don't lose any of the details in my head as I continue to read these books. But this is a really solid sequel, I thought, and it was just a romping good time. I'm also going to give a little honorable mention to the sequels for the Anne of Green Gables series. I have really been enjoying reading through this series. I think all the sequels have something special to add to Anne's story, and I've really enjoyed seeing her grow up as the series continues and seeing her life events change. I find as I read the sequels, I just fall in love with this world more and more, and so I have to shout out Anne of Green Gables books as well. Question number 3 is a new release that you haven't read yet, but you are anticipating reading, and for me, I'm going to say Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Did I get the title right? Something you might not know about me is that last year I read the Hunger Games trilogy for the first time. I don't know how I missed that boat, but I somehow did. And so the story is still fresh in my mind enough that I think I will be able to get a lot out of this next sequel. I've seen some mixed things for it, so I'm not totally sure how I will like it. It has definitely received some mixed reviews, but I do want to try this book for myself. I just have not purchased a physical copy yet, and not sure when I will squeeze it into my reading this year, but I am still interested in picking this one up. Question number 4 is, what is your most anticipated new release for the rest of the year? And honestly, I haven't been really following new releases very closely this year. I feel like I did that a lot more last year on my channel. Last year, I spent a lot more time on my channel looking up books that were going to be released, and this year I've just been focusing on the books that I own because I have way too big of a TBR for my own personal taste. But I would say the one book that I'm definitely going to be picking up when it comes out is Rhythm of War, which is the 4th book in the Stormlight Archive series. That is actually kind of the whole point of Stormalong 2020, is that so we can all have the series fresh in our minds and be ready for Rhythm of War, which I believe comes out in November. Question number 5 is, what book has been the biggest disappointment so far? I'm going to talk about 2 books, actually. First, I want to mention Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This was actually a DNF for me, so maybe it's not totally fair for me to include it in this question. But I couldn't get through this. I got maybe 15-20% through, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I didn't think it was written very well. The story was moving really slowly, and I didn't really understand the hype. This got a lot of hype when it came out, and I picked it up hoping that it would be a really fun YA fantasy, and it just didn't do it for me, so this was definitely a disappointment. I tried to read this back in January, but it didn't work. But a book that I did finish that I considered very disappointing was The Book of Boy by Catherine Gilbert Murdoch. This was the middle grade March group pick this year. Initially, I was very interested in a middle grade set in a medieval setting. I thought that was really unique and interesting, and I hadn't really read anything like that before, but about halfway through the book, it goes downhill. I didn't like where the story went. There were just some weird choices, I felt, for the plot of this book, and it didn't work for me. So I'm sorry if you like this book. I know a lot of people ended up liking this a lot, but I definitely fell on the more disappointing side for this one. Question number 6 is, what book was your biggest surprise of the year so far? In the month of May, I decided to join Book of the Month for the first time and be a subscriber and see how I liked the service. And the first book that I picked from Book of the Month was Beach Read, and I was really glad that this was my first Book of the Month book because it was really good. It surprised me greatly that I enjoyed this as much as I did. I gave this book 5 stars, which I don't usually give contemporaries or romances 5 stars. It takes a lot for me to really connect with it, but this was just very unexpected. I initially picked this up because the premise of the book just sounded really interesting. It's about 2 friends from college, and they are both writers. These 2 writers unexpectedly become neighbors, and they challenge each other to write the other person's genre. So our female character in this book writes romance, and then our male character in this book writes more serious literary fiction. His books always have a sad ending, hers always have a happy ending, and they challenge each other to write each other's genres of choice. There are some really great conversations in this book about why we decide to do the things we do, and creatively why we decide to connect with certain things. This is definitely a book with don't judge a book by its cover kind of message, and I just really enjoyed that about it. It's really fun, and it's also really emotional. It deals with some heavy family topics as well, and this was just a really great breath of fresh air when I have kind of been stumbling around romance books and not really finding any that I loved. I loved this one. Question number 7 is, who is a favorite new author, either new to you or a debut author? I'm sorry to be a broken record, but I'm going to say Brandon Sanderson again because he is technically a new to me author. I only read one book from him last year, and that was Skyward, and then most of the Brandon Sanderson that I've read has been this year. So I'm gonna go ahead and just call 2020 the year of Sanderson. Question number 8 is your newest fictional crush. I don't really do fictional crushes, but if I had to pick someone, let's just go with Gilbert from Anne of Green Gables. Gilbert is such a nice young man. Nice young man? What am I, 80 years old? Question number 9 is your newest favorite character. I'm gonna go with Vin from Mistborn. I hope this wouldn't be considered spoilers for Mistborn. I don't think it is, but I love Vin because of her growth. She has sort of a traumatic background when we meet her, and then we get to see her come into her own. We get to see her incorporate herself in a healthier society with healthier friends, and I just really enjoyed her whole story arc very much, and I never want anything bad to happen to her. I always refer to her in my head as my sweet baby Vin, because that's what she is to me. She's just my sweet baby Vin, and I want her to be okay. I want her to be successful. And so I'm a little nervous because I haven't read the 3rd book yet, and I want to make sure everything works out okay for her, so... Question number 10 is a book that made you cry. I'm not much of a book crier. I will maybe get a little bit watery. The eyes will water a little bit. But definitely one of the saddest books that I've read so far was the 5th book in Anne of Green Gables series, Anne's House of Dreams. If you've read it, you know what I'm talking about. It's definitely got some really heavy moments in it. And I'm pretty sure I had a few tears at one part of this book. Question number 11 is a book that made you happy. A lot of these books made me happy. Beach Read made me happy, I would say. But I'm going to mention a book that I haven't talked about yet, and that's The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. Just kind of uplifts your spirits, and it's a very perfect book for springtime. I feel like this would also be a really fun book to actually literally sit in a garden and read it outside. It's a sweet children's classic with a happy ending. And how could you not be happy after reading this book? It's very sweet. Question number 12 is what is the most beautiful book that you've either bought for yourself or received this year? I haven't bought a lot of books. I only did maybe 1 book haul this year, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, which I'm very proud of myself for. Buying books has definitely been a habit that has gotten a little bit out of control in the last couple years since I joined BookTube, and so this year I've done a lot better with that. But a really beautiful book that I bought for myself this year is Crown of Feathers by Nikki Pau Preto. Probably got that name wrong, but this book has such a beautiful color scheme. Just look at it. It's gorgeous. I picked this up on, I think, Book Outlet. I had heard Elliot Brooks talk highly about this book. I think there's a sequel that's now out, I'm pretty sure, and I do really want to get to this. I almost read it a couple months ago, and then it just fell a little bit further down the TBR, but it's gorgeous on the outside, and hopefully it's really good on the inside as well. It's about phoenixes, and it's a YA adventure centering around phoenix riders, so that just sounds like a lot of fun. But I can't pass this question without mentioning that I bought myself for my birthday these illustrated editions of Harry Potter, and I have been rereading Harry Potter throughout this year, and for the first 4 books I'm definitely going to be doing them through these illustrated editions. I've read the first 2, and so I need to pick up Prisoner of Azkaban next, which I have now all of the illustrated editions, so they are just such a lovely way to read the series, and I'm really excited to continue. They're just absolutely gorgeous. Question number 13 is what books do you still need to read before the end of the year? All of them, obviously. I need to read all the books. There's so many books. I'll just mention a few. All the Stormlight books. Obviously, I'm going to be reading those. Hero of Ages definitely needs to happen and will hopefully happen in a couple months. I also started reading some Leigh Bardugo this year. I need to continue with the Grisha trilogy, and then I want to get to Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom hopefully before the year is over. I would also really like to get to Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. This would be the last Sanderson book that I own that I haven't read yet and didn't have any immediate plans to read, but I've recently been hearing a lot of people talk about Warbreaker and how there's maybe going to be a continuation of this and maybe becoming a series. So I really want to get to this soon. It is the last owned Brandon Sanderson book that I haven't read yet. Well, not counting Words of Radiance or Oathbringer. Obviously, I haven't read those yet either. I really wanted to read the Cosmere books in publication order, but I'm already gonna be kind of off for that. So Warbreaker is the last book that I own physically from Brandon Sanderson that I haven't read or I don't have immediate plans to read. And then definitely I'll be finishing the Anne of Green Gables series. I'll also be finishing my reread of Harry Potter. Hopefully I get through all of those. I do have some other books on my list of books that I definitely want to get to. I have a video that I will link. It's 20 books that I want to read in 2020, and I am actually trying to stick with that list. So I've done okay. I've knocked off a few books from it, but I definitely have some more to go. So you can hop over there if you're curious about more books that I was planning on reading this year. And the last question is, who's your favorite book community member? I definitely can't just pick one, so I'm just gonna name like a bunch of people who I've been interacting with lately. Definitely the other hosts of Stormalong, Christy Lewis, and Ryan and Kristen, and Michael Nip. I've also been doing some fun buddy reads with Naomi from Naomi's Bookshelf. We're reading The Lord of the Rings right now. I've also been buddy reading the Mistborn trilogy with Rainy from Rainy Day Reads. I've enjoyed getting to know Tia from Tia and All the Books and Amanda from The Curly Reader. Since they're hosting the Anne of Green Gables readathon, I've been able to interact more with them. And I definitely don't want to leave out Angie from Literary Labors. I really enjoy her content. Also Anne from Elizabeth Ann Reads. Also Megan Hannett's channel, and also her sister Sarah Hannett. There's so many. Oh, and okay, I'll just mention one more. Somebody Reads. I've really been enjoying her videos lately too. I will link every single one of those people down below. Honestly, I could go on. I've really been branching out more this year and talking to more booktubers. I'm just really excited about the friendships that I'm making here, and it's been just one of my favorite hobbies of my adult life. And since quarantine has been happening and everything, I've been able to put more energy into this community and into my videos. So while it's been a not so great year for 2020 in the real world, it's been a great year for reading and for booktube. So thanks for watching my videos, and thank you for interacting with me and for making this community such a great part of my life. It is seriously one of the most fun things that I get to do now in my adult life. I hope you're having a great day, keep reading great books, and until next time, bye-bye.